take up the consumer's cause in Watchdog.
In Watchdog today, the champagne lifestyle of the movie business and how it went flat for thousands.
The latest in children's snacks. Are they just too hot to handle?
And why baldness is a joke that's worn too thin for the men who thought they'd be cured.
If you're in the audience tonight, right, and you're bald, right, you look stupid.
To be 8 million of them, and the majority, including Frank, thinks it's really quite funny. But the joke gets as thin as their hair when they're tempted to lash out thousands of pounds to stave off their inevitable baldness. That's when they write to us, complaining about high prices and broken promises. We agreed to investigate some of these complaints and looked around our office for a bald reporter. We've only got one, our deputy editor, Steve Rose. And he began his report, funnily enough, at the Comedy Store here in London.
The thing about bald people is that bald people seem to think that it's all right to be bald. But let me tell you something. If you're in the audience tonight, right, and you're bald, right, you look stupid. Because you haven't got any hair. And people are meant to have hair.
Baldness may be a knockabout turn for comedian Nick Hancock at London's Comedy Store, but not everyone can see the joke. These three heads belong to Watchdog viewers. Each has paid thousands of pounds, trying and failing to keep their hair on. Head A, from Devon, handed over more than £3,000 to save his dwindling locks. He says it was a complete waste of money. Head B, from London, spent a staggering £7,500 for hair treatment. He took out a loan to do it all. Just look at his invoices over the past 3 years. At one stage, he handed over £1,000 for a single bottle of lotion. Head C from Essex has so far spent £2,300 after talking to salesmen at a hair clinic. Like all the other people who contacted us, he feels humiliated and embarrassed and doesn't want to be identified.
It is just a load of sales talk. There's nothing behind it at all.
What happened when you first questioned whether this stuff was really working or not?
They said, yes, it is working. You can't see the results because it takes several months before they actually grow through, and that if hair is falling out, well then that can be expected because it's the new hairs growing through. And so they were just convincing me that things were fine all along.
Do you think in some way that you wanted something so desperately you were prepared to believe anything?
Well, perhaps I was hoping that what I heard would be the truth.
All these people went to the same company for treatment. The LST clinic advertises widely, saying you too can have faster, thicker, new hair growth. Its key selling point is the way it offers lotions coupled with a course of capsules taken daily. It's not a small operation. There are 8 branches nationwide, from London's Harley Street to Aberdeen. And it's in Aberdeen that all jokes about baldness really turn sour. There's a woman I met here who feels particularly bitter about LST. Her teenage son has universal alopecia. It's a medical condition and means he has no hair at all on his body. To save him more embarrassment, we won't name her. In autumn 1986, she was desperate. The health service had failed to help her son, so she paid LST £1,200. They promised he'd have hair by Christmas.
I was over the moon. You know, it was as though somebody had given me £1 million. I was delighted. I couldn't wait to tell the rest of my family and say, oh, you know, by Christmas my son's going to have something anyhow. Even if he just looked like, you know, some of the skinheads that go about, it's hair. It's actual hair. And that's the thing with me. I just so much wanted for this to happen.
But nothing did happen, so she went back to LST. Against her better judgment, she gave them another £500 for more treatment.
Looking at my son then, I thought, I've got to do it. I've got to give them more money because he still believes it. He still has faith in them. And that's the reason I gave them more money. It was looking at my son's face when I said I couldn't afford it.
Months later, it was clear the money had been wasted. And so, to the reporter, certified by real doctors to be bald beyond redemption. Anyone who tries to sell this man a baldness cure should have their own heads examined. Yet at LST's Harley Street office, he still got the treatment in all senses of the word. There was steaming, there was swabbing, there was infrared, a rubbery massage, and a bit of tickling with an electrical device.
And then the salesman said, and he said it with a perfectly straight face, he said, Mr. Rose, you're a lucky man. You have a full head of hair in theory. And how do you turn theory into practice? Well, you take their lotions and you take their capsules. So what on earth can be in these capsules that can bring about such a miracle?
We've been finding out what was in the capsules given to 2 Watchdog viewers. They gave them to us for analysis because they were worried the capsules might contain a drug called minoxidil. They did. Now, a few weeks ago, minoxidil as a lotion became famous. It was made available on private prescription only under the trade name Regain. No outrageous claims are made for it. It only works for a minority of people who follow a rigorous regime of use. But the main point about it is you rub it into your scalp. You must never, repeat never, swallow it to treat baldness. That's what the manufacturers say. That's what most dermatologists say. And at St Thomas's Hospital in London, that's certainly the view of Britain's leading expert on minoxidil, Dr. David Fenton.
I personally would never use minoxidil systemically or by mouth to treat male pattern baldness. There are known side effects when using the tablets. It can speed up your heart rate, it can make you retain fluid, in addition to making you hairy generally, all over. It's well known that you become hairy on your forehead and nose, cheeks, ears, and generally.
Could it do you any damage?
If you have a history of angina or previous heart attacks, then the increased heart rate and fluid retention could certainly aggravate that condition and make it worse.
We wanted to talk to Ronald Fletcher, the man behind LST, whose picture appears in all their advertising. We asked him for an interview. He said no. We asked him for a statement. He said no. We asked to speak to his many satisfied customers. He said we couldn't. Finally, we asked him if he was still supplying minoxidil capsules. He said, I don't know. I'm not a doctor.
Most people who go bald really couldn't care less. They discover that by far and away the best cure for baldness is a decent sense of humour.
When you see a bald person in the street, right, walk up to them, and then just as you're walking past them, say, I'm going for a haircut now.
What a shame that baldness isn't always a laughing matter.
I feel so let down on behalf of my son. I mean, to do that to anybody, I think that's just making money out of somebody's misery.
Steve Rose reporting there. Now, although the LST clinic wouldn't talk to us, we think it only fair to try to put their point of view. They say 87% of their customers are satisfied. Their management includes a doctor and a retired dermatologist, and they make sure their clients sign a disclaimer form. This says the possibilities and limitations of medical hair treatment have been explained, and that hair growth has not been promised. Everyone we spoke to, though, said they'd signed without reading it, which simply reminds us to remind you, please, please don't sign anything without reading it first. Right, boss?
Yeah, no matter how long it takes, too. Right, now for your letters. We get loads and loads from you about design faults that you think you've spotted in all sorts of products. Now, this one could affect thousands of people who drive one of Britain's most popular cars. It came from Carol Manthorpe from Plumstead in southeast London. The design fault she's sure she spotted is in her 7-year-old Ford Escort estate. And to the uninitiated, it looks pretty serious. See those cracks in the body there? That's just behind the front wheel. Now, Carol took her car for its MOT last month. It failed because of those cracks. So next she took it to the local Ford main dealer, where she was told the work would cost around £500 to put right. £500 for something that wasn't anything to do with her.
Now, we know Ford did have a design fault with their W, X and Y registered Escorts. We know because we have details of about 150 cars which developed the same cracks.
Well, Ford modified the design about 5 years ago, but they didn't recall their cars because the cracks weren't dangerous. They didn't tell their customers either. Terry and Sally Girl were furious when they were told they'd have to pay for cracks in Escort XR3. Luckily, they kicked up such a fuss, they got the car repaired for nothing.
But the crazy thing is, strictly cars with cracks like these should fail the MOT. So, sure enough, some MOT stations have been failing cracked Escorts and some have been passing them. Some owners have had to pay for the cracks to be put right and some haven't.
Well, we contacted Ford. They told us they'd persuaded the Department of Transport these cracks were safe, so they shouldn't fail the MOT.
The Department of Transport said not so. They may well be safe, but there's no way they could issue an instruction to their testing stations to ignore the cracks.
So we went back to Ford because we think they ought to be offering Escort owners with these cracks a free check. We also think they ought to be offering to pay for some of the work, even though the cars are 5 to 8 years old, and in some cases they ought to be paying for all of it. Well, we're delighted to say they now seem to agree with us. So if you've got a cracking Escort, you can have it checked at a Ford main dealer. The company assures us that each case will be dealt with sympathetically. Great.
And that's just about it. Don't forget that if you have a problem, either drop us a line or call the hotline. Our address and phone number will be on your screen in just a moment.
And next week, we'll be bringing down the curtain on this series of Watchdog. It's our last programme, so we'll be bringing you the latest on some of our past investigations, plus a few new ones as well. Till then, that's Watchdog.
Bye-bye.